What would you do if your 7-year-old stepdaughter refused every single meal you made for 3 months straight? You'd probably think she was just being a picky eater, right? Well, I thought the same thing. Until the night she whispered 6 words that changed everything. Daddy put poison in Mommy's food. This is the story of how a child's refusal to eat saved both our lives. You know that feeling when you think you're finally getting your happy ending, only to realize you might be walking into something much darker. That's exactly where I found myself 3 months ago. My name is Claire Miller, and I'm 34 years old. I'm a veterinarian, which means I spend most of my days helping animals who can't tell me what's wrong. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I was about to discover about the little girl who couldn't tell me what was really wrong either. It was a crisp October morning in Bellingham, Washington. You know those mornings where the air is so cold, it makes your cheeks sting, but the sun is shining just bright enough to make you believe everything is going to be okay. That was today. I was standing in the kitchen of what was now my new home, our home, trying to make the perfect first breakfast as a stepmom. I had moved in just 2 weeks earlier after marrying Adam Miller. Adam was this quiet, reserved software engineer who worked from home most days. He was a widower, and honestly, that's what initially drew me to him. There was something about his gentle sadness that made me want to take care of him. He had lost his wife Jessica 2 years ago to what he described as a sudden illness. He didn't like talking about it much, which I understood. Grief is different for everyone, but Adam came with a package deal. His 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Now I had always wanted children. It's part of why I became a vet, actually. I love taking care of vulnerable creatures. So when Adam told me about Lily on our third date, I was honestly excited. I thought, here's my chance to be the mother I've always dreamed of being. Boy, was I wrong. That first morning, I had gotten up at 6 a.m. to make what I thought would be the perfect welcome breakfast. I'm talking fluffy pancakes from scratch, not the box stuff. Fresh orange juice. Even cut the fruit into little flower shapes because, 7-year-old girls like cute things, right? I had it all laid out perfectly on our small dining table. The morning light was streaming through the kitchen window, hitting the plates just right. It looked like something out of a home magazine. I was so proud of myself. Then Lily walked downstairs. She was this tiny little thing with long brown hair that always seemed to hang in front of her face. Big brown eyes that reminded me so much of a scared deer. She was wearing this faded pink pajama set that was probably too small for her, but she clung to it like a security blanket. "Good morning, Lily," I said, and I tried to make my voice as warm and gentle as possible. I had practiced this moment in the mirror the night before, if I'm being honest. But Lily didn't even look at me. She mumbled something that might have been morning and slid into her chair, but she kept her eyes fixed on the table. Not on the food, not on me, just on the empty space in front of her. I set the plate of pancakes down in front of her, and I swear I saw her flinch. Not like I was going to hit her or anything, but like the plate itself was something dangerous. "I made them with extra butter, just like you like," I said, even though I had no idea what she actually liked. Adam had been pretty vague about her preferences, just saying she was easy to please. Lily stared at the pancakes like they were going to bite her back. She picked up her fork, held it for a moment, then put it down again. That's when Adam walked in. Adam always read the newspaper in the morning. Old school, right? He'd sit there with his coffee and his paper like he was from the 1950s. But there was something about the way he did it that always felt more intense than it should have been. Like he was studying the news instead of just reading it. He looked at Lily's untouched plate and his jaw tightened. "Lily?" he said, and his voice had this edge to it that made even me uncomfortable. "Claire worked very hard on this breakfast. The least you can do is try it." I quickly jumped in. "Oh, it's okay if she's not hungry. Maybe she's just not a breakfast person." But Adam's eyes stayed fixed on his daughter. "She needs to eat. Jessica always made sure she ate breakfast." There it was, Jessica, his late wife. He rarely mentioned her, but when he did, It was always in this tone that somehow made me feel like I was failing at something I didn't even understand. Lily picked up a tiny piece of pancake with her fork. Her hand was actually shaking. She brought it to her mouth, chewed it slowly, then swallowed like it was the most difficult thing in the world. "See, it's good, isn't it?" Adam said, but it didn't sound like a question. It sounded like a demand. Lily nodded quickly, but I could see tears forming in her eyes. I couldn't take it anymore. "Hey, Lily, you know what? Maybe you're more of a cereal girl. I think I saw some Lucky Charms in the pantry." That's when Lily did something that broke my heart. She looked at me with these wide, terrified eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama Claire. I'm just not hungry." Mama Claire. She had never called me that before. It should have been the sweetest moment, but something about the way she said it felt desperate. Then she got up from the table and walked away. Just like that. Left her plate sitting there, barely touched. Adam sighed heavily and folded his newspaper with more force than necessary. "She's still grieving," he said, not looking at me. "Jessica's cooking was all she knew. She'll come around." But I was starting to wonder if that was really what this was about. The rest of that week followed the same pattern. I would make breakfast, lunch, dinner. Beautiful, nutritious meals that any kid should have been excited about. And Lily would sit there, stare at the food, like it was poison. Maybe take a bite or two. If Adam pressured her enough, then excuse herself. I started questioning everything about myself. Was I a terrible cook? Was I trying too hard? Was I just not cut out for this whole stepmother thing? I remember one particularly bad evening. I had made homemade mac and cheese, which I thought was foolproof. What kid doesn't love mac and cheese? But Lily took one look at it and started crying. Not loud sobbing, just these quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks. Adam's reaction was immediate. "Lily, stop this nonsense right now. You're being rude to Claire." "It's okay," I said quickly. "Maybe she's just tired." But Adam was already standing up, towering over this tiny 7-year-old girl. "You will eat what's put in front of you, or you'll go to your room without dinner." That's when I noticed something that would stick with me for weeks. When Adam raised his voice, even just a little bit, Lily didn't just look sad or defiant like most kids would. She looked terrified, like genuinely, physically terrified. She ate the mac and cheese, every single bite. But she looked sick the entire time. After she went to bed that night, I tried talking to Adam about it. "Maybe we should take her to see someone," I suggested. "A counselor, or even just her pediatrician. This level of anxiety around food isn't normal." Adam was washing dishes at the sink, his back to me. "She doesn't need a shrink. She just needs time and consistency." "But Adam, she's clearly struggling with something more than just grief." He turned around then, and for just a second, I saw something flash across his face that I couldn't quite identify. Anger, fear, whatever it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Claire, I've been raising this child for 2 years without Jessica. I think I know what's best for my daughter." His daughter, not our daughter. The way he said it made it clear that I was still an outsider in this family dynamic. That's when I decided I needed to talk to someone who might have a different perspective. Mia Johnson lived next door. She was probably in her early 50s, with graying hair that she always wore in this perfect bob, and the kindest smile I'd ever seen. She was an elementary school teacher, which meant she had spent decades around children of all kinds. If anyone could help me understand what was going on with Lily, it would be her. I found myself knocking on her door the next afternoon after a particularly difficult lunch, where Lily had refused to eat anything at all. "Claire, honey, come in," Mia said the moment she saw my face. "You look like you need some tea and a friendly ear." Her house was exactly what you'd expect from an elementary school teacher. Warm colors, comfortable furniture, and books everywhere. She led me to her kitchen table and put a steaming mug of chamomile tea in front of me. "So," she said, settling into the chair across from me. "Tell me what's going on." I found myself spilling everything. The refused meals, the tears, Adam's frustration, my own growing anxiety about whether I was doing something terribly wrong. Mia listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, her expression growing more thoughtful with each detail I shared. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Claire, she finally said, in my 30 years of teaching, I've seen a lot of children dealing with grief, divorce, major life changes. And while it's true that some kids do have eating issues during transitions, what you're describing sounds like something more specific. What do you mean? She leaned forward slightly. Most children who are grieving or adjusting to a new family situation will still eat when they're truly hungry. They might be picky, they might want comfort foods, but they don't usually refuse all food consistently, and they certainly don't look terrified while eating. My heart started beating faster. So, what do you think it is? I think, Mia said carefully, that sometimes children sense more than we think they do. Sometimes their behavior is trying to tell us something that they can't put into words. Like what? I don't know yet. But I think you should trust your instincts here. You're noticing things that don't add up, and that's important. Don't let anyone convince you that you're imagining it. As I walked back to my house that evening, Mia's words kept echoing in my mind. Sometimes children sense more than we think. What was Lily sensing that I wasn't seeing yet? That night at dinner, I watched more carefully. I noticed how Lily's hands would shake slightly when she picked up her fork, how she would glance at Adam before taking each bite like she was asking for permission, how she would chew slowly, deliberately, like she was analyzing every taste. And I noticed something else. Adam watched her eat with an intensity that seemed excessive, not like a concerned father making sure his child was getting proper nutrition. More like he was waiting for something to happen. When Lily finished about half her meal and asked to be excused, Adam nodded approvingly. "Good girl," he said. "You're doing much better." But as I cleared the table later, I found myself wondering better at what exactly. That was the night I started to realize that maybe the problem wasn't that I was a bad stepmother, or that Lily was just grieving, or that I was overthinking everything. Maybe the problem was something much more serious than any of us were admitting. And maybe a 7-year-old girl was trying to protect herself in the only way she knew how. By refusing to eat. By the 3rd week, I was starting to panic. And I mean, real, genuine panic. The kind where you wake up at 3 in the morning with your heart racing, wondering if you're completely losing your mind, or if something is seriously wrong. It started when I decided to pick Lily up from school myself. Adam usually did the pickup since he worked from home, but I had finished my appointments early that day and thought it might be nice to surprise her. Maybe we could grab ice cream or just have some one-on-one time without Adam hovering. Lily's school was one of those typical Pacific Northwest elementary schools. Red brick, big windows, playground equipment that looked like it belonged in a magazine about happy childhoods. I was standing outside her classroom when Mrs. Peterson, her teacher, came out to talk to me. Mrs. Peterson was probably in her 40s with short blonde hair and those wire-rimmed glasses that made her look both professional and approachable. She had that teacher energy, you know, the kind of person who could manage 25 7-year-olds and still have patience left over. "Mrs. Miller," she said, and I noticed she hesitated slightly before continuing. "I'm so glad I caught you. I've been meaning to talk to someone about Lily." My stomach immediately dropped. Is she having trouble with her schoolwork? "Oh no, academically, she's doing wonderfully. She's actually one of my brightest students. It's just," she glanced around to make sure no other parents were listening. "I've noticed that Lily barely touches her lunch. Every day. I've been teaching for 15 years, and I can usually tell the difference between a picky eater and a child who's genuinely struggling with food." I felt like someone had just confirmed my worst fears. "What do you mean?" "Well, most kids will eat something even if it's just the dessert or the crackers. But Lily will sit there for the entire lunch period and maybe take 1 or 2 bites. Then she'll very carefully wrap everything back up and throw it away. She's very methodical about it, like she's following some kind of routine." "Have you noticed anything else?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Mrs. Peterson looked thoughtful. She's very withdrawn during group activities. Not shy exactly, but watchful. Like she's constantly scanning the room for something. And she's incredibly jumpy. If I approach her too quickly, or speak a little too loudly, she startles in a way that seems excessive. This was not what I wanted to hear. This was confirmation that whatever was happening at home was affecting Lily at school too. Mrs. Peterson, I said carefully, has anyone else noticed these behaviors? The school counselor, maybe? That's actually what I wanted to discuss with you. I think it might be helpful for Lily to talk to someone. We have an excellent school psychologist who specializes in children dealing with grief and family transitions. I nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. Whatever she needs. The thing is, Mrs. Peterson continued, I'll need permission from both parents for any counseling services. Has Mr. Miller mentioned anything about Lily's eating habits or anxiety? That was a good question. Had Adam mentioned it? He always seemed frustrated with Lily's eating, but he'd never suggested that it was anything more than stubbornness or grief. I'll talk to him tonight, I said. But in the meantime, maybe I should take her to her pediatrician, just to rule out any medical issues. Mrs. Peterson smiled for the first time in our conversation. I think that's a wonderful idea. Sometimes physical issues can manifest as behavioral problems, especially in children who have experienced trauma. Trauma. There was that word again. When Lily came out of the classroom, she looked surprised to see me instead of Adam. Hi, Mama Claire, she said quietly. Where's Daddy? He's working, so I thought I'd pick you up today. How was school? She shrugged. Okay. As we walked to the car, I found myself studying her more carefully than usual. She was thin. Not just petite, but actually thin. When had that happened? Had she always been this small, or had I just not noticed? Lily, I said as I buckled her into her car seat, are you feeling okay? No tummy aches or anything? She shook her head quickly. Too quickly. Sometimes kids don't feel hungry when they're sad about missing their mommy, I said gently. It's okay to talk about that if you want to. For a moment, I thought she might actually say something. Her mouth opened slightly, and she looked like she was wrestling with words that wanted to come out. But then, she just shook her head again and stared out the window. That afternoon, I called Dr. Sarah Chen Lily's pediatrician. I'd met her once before during a routine checkup shortly after Adam and I got married. She was thorough, kind, and had a way of talking to children that made them feel safe. I'd like to bring Lily in for a consultation, I told her nurse. I'm concerned about some eating and anxiety issues. We got an appointment for the next day. The pediatric office was exactly what you'd expect. Bright colors, cartoon characters on the walls, that particular smell of disinfectant mixed with children's vitamins. Lily sat on the examination table, swinging her legs nervously while Dr. Chen checked her height and weight. Well, Dr. Chen said, looking at her chart, Lily is definitely on the lower end of the growth curve for her age. Not dangerously so, but it's something we should monitor. She listened to Lily's heart, and lungs checked her throat, felt her lymph nodes. All the standard stuff. Lily was cooperative, but tense, like she was enduring something unpleasant, rather than just having a routine checkup. Lily, Dr. Chen said in that gentle voice, doctors use with scared children, can you tell me about your appetite lately? Are you feeling hungry at mealtimes? Lily glanced at me, then back at the doctor. Sometimes. And when you do feel hungry, do you eat? Another glance at me. I try to. Dr. Chen made some notes. What about your tummy? Does it hurt when you eat or feel funny? Sometimes, Lily said again, which seemed to be her default answer to everything. After the physical examination, Dr. Chen asked me to step into her office while Lily played with some toys in the waiting area. Physically, Lily appears to be healthy, she said, settling behind her desk. Her blood pressure is normal, no signs of illness or digestive issues, but I am concerned about her weight and her overall demeanor. What do you mean? In my experience, children who are simply grieving or adjusting to family changes will still have periods where they eat normally, where they seem more relaxed. What I'm seeing with Lily suggests a more persistent form of anxiety. I felt my throat tighten. So, what do we do? I'd like to refer you to a child psychologist who specializes in trauma and anxiety disorders. Sometimes children experience things that they can't articulate, and it manifests in behaviors like food refusal or hypervigilance. But I love her like my own, I said, and I could hear the desperation in my voice. I'm trying so hard to make her feel safe and welcome. Dr. Chen's expression softened. I can see that, and I'm sure Lily can feel your love. But even the strongest love can't erase trauma overnight. Sometimes children need professional help to process experiences that are too big for them to handle alone. What kind of trauma are you talking about? That's what we need to find out. It could be related to her mother's death, the transition to a new family structure, or... She paused. Sometimes children experience things that adults aren't aware of. The way she said it made my skin crawl. What do you mean? I'm not suggesting anything specific, Dr. Chen said quickly. But children are often more observant than we realize. They pick up on tensions, conflicts, even things that happen when adults think they're not paying attention. I left that appointment with a referral to Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a child psychologist, and a sick feeling in my stomach that I couldn't shake. When I got home, Adam was in his office typing away at his computer. I knocked on the doorframe and waited for him to look up. "How did it go?" he asked, not taking his hands off the keyboard. Dr. Chen thinks Lily would benefit from talking to a child psychologist. She's concerned about the eating issues and some anxiety she's noticing. Adam finally stopped typing and turned to face me. A psychologist? Don't you think that's a bit extreme? I don't think so. Her teacher is noticing the same behaviors at school. Lily's not eating there either, and she seems constantly anxious. Claire, you're overthinking this. Kids go through phases. She'll eat when she's hungry. Adam, she's lost weight. Her pediatrician is concerned. He stood up from his desk, and I noticed that familiar tension in his jaw. Look, I appreciate that you're trying to help, but I know my daughter. This is just her way of processing grief. Throwing her into therapy is only going to make her think something is wrong with her. But what if something is wrong? What if she needs help that we can't give her? She needs stability and patience, not a bunch of strangers asking her invasive questions about her feelings. The way he said it was so final, so dismissive, that I felt like I'd been slapped. But I also noticed something else. When he talked about Lily needing stability, he wasn't looking at me. He was looking past me like he was trying to convince himself of something. That evening at dinner, I watched the usual ritual play out. Lily, sitting quietly, staring at her plate of spaghetti and meatballs. Adam, reading something on his phone while eating. The silence broken only by the sound of forks against plates. I decided to try a different approach. Lily, I said gently, I was thinking maybe this weekend we could cook something together. Would you like that? Maybe we could make cookies or brownies. She looked up at me with those big brown eyes, and for a second I saw a flicker of interest. What kind of cookies? She asked quietly. Whatever kind you want. Chocolate chip, sugar cookies, snickerdoodles. I like snickerdoodles, she said, and it was the first time I'd heard her express a preference for any food. Then snickerdoodles it is, I said, smiling. But then Adam cleared his throat loudly, and I watched Lily's face change. The little spark of excitement disappeared, replaced by that familiar look of caution. Lily needs to focus on eating regular meals before we start making treats, Adam said without looking up from his phone. Oh, I just thought it might be fun, I said quickly. Sometimes kids are more interested in eating things they help make. She needs to learn to eat what's put in front of her. That's how children develop healthy eating habits. His voice wasn't loud, but there was something in his tone that made Lily flinch. Actually flinch like he'd raised his hand to her. I looked at her carefully. She was sitting perfectly still, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth, waiting to see what would happen next. Of course, I said quietly. We can do that some other time. Adam nodded approvingly and went back to his phone, Lily slowly resumed eating, but I could see that her hands were shaking slightly. That night, after Lily was in bed and Adam was absorbed in some work project, I found myself back at Mia's kitchen table. I took her to the doctor today, I told Mia, wrapping my hands around another mug of tea. The pediatrician thinks she needs to talk to a child psychologist. That sounds like a reasonable recommendation. What did Adam say? He thinks I'm overreacting. He says she just needs time and stability. Mia was quiet for a moment, stirring honey into her tea. Claire, can I ask you something that might be uncomfortable? At this point, I'm ready for uncomfortable questions. Have you noticed any patterns in Lily's behavior? Specifically, any differences in how she acts when Adam is around versus when he's not? The question hit me like a physical blow. Because the answer was so obvious, I couldn't believe I hadn't articulated it to myself before. She's more tense when he's around, I said slowly. More watchful. And today at dinner, when he raised his voice just slightly, she flinched like she was expecting to be hit. And how does Adam typically respond when Lily doesn't eat? He gets frustrated. Sometimes he insists that she finish her food even when she's clearly struggling. Mia nodded thoughtfully. In my experience, children who have been through trauma often develop hypervigilance around authority figures. They become very attuned to changes in tone, body language, mood. But Adam isn't abusive, I said quickly. He's never laid a hand on her. He's just frustrated because he wants her to be healthy. I'm not suggesting that he's abusive, Mia said carefully. But sometimes, children pick up on things that adults miss. Sometimes their behavior is trying to tell us something important. Like what? I don't know yet, but I think you should trust your instincts here. And I think you should pay attention to those patterns. When is Lily most anxious? When is she most relaxed? What specific things seem to trigger her fear response? As I walked home that night, Mia's words echoed in my head. Pay attention to patterns. The pattern was becoming clearer, and it was more disturbing than I wanted to admit. Lily was afraid of her father, not just nervous or uncomfortable. Afraid. And I was starting to think that maybe she had good reason to be. After my conversation with Mia about patterns, I decided to try a different approach. I thought maybe the problem was that I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I needed to be more creative, more fun, more appealing to a 7-year-old's imagination. So I threw myself into cooking like my life depended on it. I'm talking about full Pinterest mom mode here. I made rainbow pasta with different colored vegetables. I cut sandwiches into butterfly shapes and star shapes. I arranged fruit into smiley faces and made little cheese cubes that looked like building blocks. I even bought those special pics with little animals on top to make everything look more fun and inviting. One morning, I spent 2 hours making what I thought was the most adorable breakfast plate any kid had ever seen. Heart-shaped pancakes with strawberry eyes and a whipped cream smile. Orange juice in a cup with a curly straw. Even the bacon was arranged to look like little flowers. I was so proud of myself. I actually took a picture before Lily came downstairs, because I thought this was finally going to be the breakthrough moment. Lily walked into the kitchen, took one look at the plate, and her face crumpled. Not like she was angry or disgusted. She looked heartbroken. "I'm sorry, Mama Claire," she whispered, and her voice was so quiet I almost didn't hear her. "I'm not hungry." But this time, there was something different in the way she said it. It wasn't just, "I'm not hungry." It was, "I'm sorry, Mama, I'm not hungry." Like she was apologizing for disappointing me, but also like she was apologizing for something bigger that I didn't understand. I knelt down next to her chair. "Lily, sweetheart, you don't have to be sorry. But can you tell me what's wrong? Does your tummy hurt? Are you feeling sick?" She shook her head quickly, but I could see tears forming in her eyes. "Is the food scary somehow? We can make something different." Another head shake, but now she was really crying. Not loud sobbing, just these silent tears that made my heart break. "Honey, please talk to me. I just want to help." That's when she looked at me with those big brown eyes and said something that sent chills down my spine. "I can't tell you, Mama Claire. I'm not allowed. Not allowed. Not, I don't want to, or I don't know how. She wasn't allowed to tell me. Who says you're not allowed, sweetheart? But before she could answer, I heard Adam's footsteps on the stairs, and Lily immediately wiped her eyes and sat up straighter, like someone had pulled a string and turned her into a little soldier. This pattern continued for days. I would make these elaborate, beautiful meals, and Lily would stare at them with this expression that I was finally starting to recognize. It wasn't disgust or lack of appetite. It was fear. She was afraid of the food. But why would a 7-year-old be afraid of food? It didn't make any logical sense. Unless... No. I couldn't let my mind go there. That was too dark, too terrible to even consider. But the thought kept creeping in anyway. By Thursday of that week, I was exhausted. Not just physically, but emotionally. I felt like I was failing at the most basic part of being a mother figure, keeping a child fed and healthy. And the worst part was that I could see Lily was losing more weight. Her clothes were hanging looser on her tiny frame, and there were dark circles under her eyes that made her look older than 7. That evening, I decided to make one last attempt. I made her absolute favorite meal according to Adam. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Simple, classic, comforting. Nothing fancy, nothing that could be intimidating. We all sat down at the dinner table. Adam was scrolling through his phone as usual. I was watching Lily carefully, hoping that maybe this time would be different. Lily picked up half of the grilled cheese sandwich. It was cut into triangles, golden brown, and perfectly toasted. She held it in her small hands and stared at it like it was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "It looks perfect, doesn't it?" I said encouragingly. "Nice and crispy, just the way you like it." She nodded and brought the sandwich toward her mouth, but then she stopped. Her hand was actually shaking. "Lily," Adam said without looking up from his phone, "eat your dinner." She took a tiny bite, chewed it slowly, swallowed with what looked like tremendous effort. "Good girl," Adam said approvingly. "See, it's not that hard." But I was watching Lily's face and something was very wrong. She looked nauseous. Actually nauseous, like she was fighting not to throw up. She managed to eat about a quarter of the sandwich before she put it down and pushed the plate away. "I'm full," she whispered. That's when Adam finally looked up from his phone and I saw an expression on his face that I'd never seen before. It was cold. Really cold. "You're not full," he said, and his voice had an edge to it that made even me uncomfortable. "You barely ate anything." "Adam," I said quietly, "maybe she really isn't feeling well." "She's fine," he snapped, still staring at Lily. "She's just being stubborn." Lily's eyes were wide with fear now. Real, genuine terror. "Daddy, please," she whispered. "My tummy hurts." "Your tummy hurts because you're not eating properly," Adam said, standing up from his chair. "You will finish that sandwich." "Adam, please," I said, standing up too. "Look at her. She's scared." But Adam wasn't listening to me. He was focused entirely on Lily, towering over her with an intensity that was absolutely terrifying. "Stop wasting food," he yelled. And I mean yelled, not raised his voice, not spoke sternly. He shouted at this tiny 7-year-old girl like she was an adult who had personally offended him. Lily started shaking, not just her hands this time, but her whole body. She was trembling like a leaf in a windstorm. "I'm sorry, Daddy," she whispered through her tears. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry." That's when something inside me snapped. "Stop," I said firmly, stepping between Adam and Lily. "Just stop, you're scaring her." Adam looked at me like I had just betrayed him in the worst possible way. "I'm trying to teach her proper eating habits," he said, but his voice was still loud and angry. "By terrifying her. Look at her, Adam. She's shaking." I turned to Lily, who was now crying openly. "Sweetheart, it's okay. You don't have to eat anything else. Why don't you go upstairs and wash your face?" Lily looked between me and Adam, clearly torn between wanting to escape and being afraid to leave without his permission. "Go ahead," I said gently. "It's okay," She practically ran from the room. Adam and I stood there in the sudden silence staring at each other across the dinner table. "You're undermining me," he said finally. "I'm protecting her from being traumatized over a grilled cheese sandwich. She needs to learn discipline. She needs to feel safe in her own home." We had never fought like this before. Never. In all the months we'd been together, Adam had been nothing but gentle and reasonable. But standing there in that moment looking at the expression on his face, I felt like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. And what I saw scared me. The next day, I was grateful when Mia called and asked if she could come over for coffee. I needed someone to talk to, someone who might help me make sense of what was happening. Mia arrived around 2 in the afternoon carrying a plate of homemade cookies and wearing that warm smile that always made me feel like everything was going to be okay. "Where's our little Lily?" she asked as I poured coffee. "Upstairs in her room. She's been up there most of the day, actually." We settled at the kitchen table, and I found myself telling Mia about the previous night's dinner disaster. About Adam's reaction, about Lily's fear, about my growing certainty that something was very wrong in this house. "Claire," Mia said when I finished, "I need to tell you something and I want you to really listen to me." "Okay." "Last week, when I was here having tea, Adam came home while we were talking. Do you remember?" I nodded. He had come in briefly to say hello and grab something from his office. I watched Lily when she heard his car in the driveway. She went completely rigid, and when he walked into the room, she actually moved behind the couch, like she was trying to hide. "She's just shy around people," I said weakly. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. "Claire, I've been teaching children for 30 years. I know the difference between shy and terrified. Lily is terrified of her father." The words hung in the air between us like a physical presence. "But why?" I whispered. "I've never seen him hit her or even really yell at her except for last night." "Abuse doesn't always leave visible marks," Mia said gently. "Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's more subtle than that." "What do you mean?" Mia hesitated, like she was choosing her words very carefully. "Has Adam ever told you exactly how his first wife died?" "He said it was sudden, some kind of illness. He doesn't like to talk about it." "Has he shown you any medical records? Death certificate? Anything official?" I felt my blood run cold. Why would I need to see those things? Because sometimes when children are afraid to eat, especially when they're afraid to eat food prepared by a specific person, it's because they've learned that food isn't safe. The implication of what she was saying hit me like a physical blow. "Are you suggesting that Adam—" "I'm not suggesting anything specific," Mia said quickly. "But I am saying that you need to trust your instincts. Something is not right here, and Lily is trying to tell you that in the only way she knows how." That night, after Adam had gone to bed and the house was quiet, I found myself standing in front of the bathroom mirror staring at my own reflection. I looked tired. More than tired, actually. I looked haunted. "Is it grief?" I whispered to my reflection. "Or is it fear?" But even as I asked the question, I already knew the answer. It was fear. Lily wasn't grieving her mother's death. She was terrified that the same thing that happened to her mother was going to happen to me. And suddenly, every refused meal, every whispered apology, every terrified glance toward her father made perfect, horrible sense. She wasn't just afraid of the food. She was afraid that the food was going to kill me, just like it had killed her mother. Friday morning arrived like a gift from heaven. I was making coffee when Adam came downstairs with his overnight bag already dressed in his business clothes. "I'll be back Sunday evening," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "There's leftover takeout in the fridge if you don't feel like cooking." "We'll be fine," I told him, and for the first time in weeks, I actually meant it. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I felt something shift in the house. It was like the air itself became lighter, easier to breathe. I hadn't realized how tense I'd been until the tension was suddenly gone. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway about 10 minutes later, still in her pajamas, but looking more alert than I'd seen her in days. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, but there was something different in her voice. Not the usual careful wariness, but something that almost sounded like relief. "He went on a business trip. It's just you and me for the whole weekend." I watched her face carefully, and I swear I saw her shoulders relax just slightly. "What do you want to do today?" I asked. "We could stay in and watch movies, or maybe go somewhere fun. The choice is totally yours." Lily considered this for a moment, like she wasn't used to being given choices. "Could we go to the park?" she asked quietly. "Absolutely. Which park?" "The one with the big swings and the ducks." I knew exactly which park she meant. Fairhaven Park, about 15 minutes away. It had a beautiful pond, plenty of open space, and playground equipment that was actually well maintained. "That sounds perfect, but first let's get some breakfast in you." I saw her tense up slightly at the mention of food, but I had an idea. "How about we make breakfast together? You can help me decide what to make." To my surprise, she nodded. We ended up making scrambled eggs and toast. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. But the important thing was that Lily was involved in every step. She cracked the eggs, she stirred them in the pan, she even buttered her own toast. And when we sat down to eat, something miraculous happened. She actually ate. Not a lot, but she ate without fear, without that terrible tension I'd grown accustomed to seeing. She took small bites, chewed thoughtfully, and even asked for a second piece of toast. "This is really good," she said quietly. "You helped make it," I told her. "That's probably why it tastes so special." She smiled then. An actual, genuine smile. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her since I'd moved into this house. An hour later, we were at Fairhaven Park. It was one of those perfect Pacific Northwest autumn days. Cool enough for sweaters, but sunny enough that you wanted to be outside. The leaves on the trees were just starting to turn, painting everything in warm yellows and oranges. Lily ran straight to the swings, and I was amazed by the transformation. This was a completely different child from the tense, fearful little girl I'd been living with. She pumped her legs and soared higher and higher, laughing out loud in a way that made my heart feel like it might burst. "Push me higher, Mama Claire," she called out, and I gladly obliged. We spent almost 2 hours at that park. Lily played on every piece of equipment, fed breadcrumbs to the ducks, and even convinced me to go down the slide with her. She was playful, chatty, and completely relaxed in a way I'd never seen before. Around noon we got hungry, so I pulled out the picnic lunch I'd packed. Simple sandwiches, apple slices, and juice boxes. Nothing complicated. Lily looked at the sandwich I offered her, and for just a second, I saw that familiar flash of fear cross her face. But then she seemed to remember that we were alone, that Adam wasn't there, and her expression cleared. She took a bite, then another. Then she smiled at me. "Is it good?" I asked, hardly daring to believe what I was seeing. She nodded enthusiastically. "I like your sandwiches, Mama Claire." Mama Claire. Not Mama, but Mama Claire, like she was claiming me as her own while still keeping some distance. It was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard, and I had to blink back tears. "I'm so glad," I managed to say. "I love making food for you." "You do?" "Of course I do. That's what mamas do. We take care of the people we love." She considered this while taking another bite of her sandwich. "My first mama used to make me sandwiches too," she said quietly, "before she got sick." This was the first time she'd voluntarily mentioned her mother in my presence. "Tell me about her," I said gently. "She was really pretty, and she smelled like flowers. And she used to sing to me when I couldn't sleep." "She sounds wonderful." She was, but then she started getting sick all the time. She would sleep a lot, and her hands would shake, and sometimes she would throw up after dinner. I felt my stomach clench, but I tried to keep my voice casual. "That must have been really scary for you." "It was. Daddy said it was because she had a bad sickness in her body that the doctors couldn't fix." "Did the doctors try to help her?" Lily shook her head. Daddy said the doctors couldn't help her, so he would take care of her himself. He would make her special food with medicine in it. The way she said it made my blood run cold. Medicine in her food? Uh-huh, white powder medicine that he would mix in. He said it would make her feel better, but it seemed like it made her feel worse. I was struggling to keep my voice steady. What kind of white powder? I don't know, but after she ate it, she would get really sleepy and sometimes she would fall down. Oh God. Oh my God. Lily, I said carefully, did your daddy ever put that white powder in your food? She shook her head quickly. No. He said I was too little for grown-up medicine. But what? But sometimes I was scared he might, so I stopped eating very much, just in case. The pieces were falling into place with horrifying clarity. Jessica hadn't died of some mysterious illness. She'd been poisoned. Slowly, systematically poisoned by her own husband. And Lily had witnessed it all. Lily, I said gently, has your daddy ever put anything in my food, any kind of powder or medicine? She looked around nervously, even though we were completely alone in the park. I don't know, she whispered, but I've been watching. That's why I don't like to eat. I was trying to protect you. My heart broke into a million pieces. This 7-year-old child had been carrying this terrible burden, trying to save my life, in the only way she knew how. Oh, sweetheart, I said, pulling her into a hug. You've been so brave. You've been taking care of me, haven't you? She nodded against my shoulder, and I could feel her tears soaking through my shirt. I didn't want you to get sick like Mommy did. Thank you for protecting me, I whispered. You're the bravest little girl I've ever known. We held each other for a long time, sitting on that park bench with the autumn sun warming our faces, and for the first time since I'd married Adam, I felt like Lily and I were really truly connected. Not just as stepmother and stepdaughter, but as two people who cared about each other and wanted to keep each other safe. The rest of the afternoon was wonderful. We walked around the pond, played more on the playground, and Lily continued to eat small amounts of food without fear. It was like seeing her become herself for the first time. But as the day wore on and we headed home, I could see the anxiety creeping back into her expression. The closer we got to the house, the more tense she became. It's okay, I told her as we pulled into the driveway. Your daddy won't be home until tomorrow night. We have all evening together. That seemed to help a little. Back at home, I decided to try something I'd been wanting to do for weeks. Lily, would you like to help me make dinner? We could cook together just like we did with breakfast. To my delight, she nodded eagerly. We made a simple salad and grilled chicken. Lily washed the lettuce, tore it into pieces, and arranged everything in the bowl like she was creating a work of art. She was focused and happy, chattering about her favorite vegetables and asking me questions about cooking. When we sat down to eat, I was hopeful that this would be another breakthrough moment. Lily had helped prepare the meal. We were alone, and she'd been relaxed all day. But the moment I put the plate in front of her, everything changed. She stared at the food with that familiar expression of terror, her fork frozen in her hand. The transformation was so sudden and complete that it took my breath away. Lily, what's wrong, sweetheart? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I can't, Mama Claire. I'm sorry I can't. But you helped make it. You know exactly what's in it. I know, but... She was struggling to find the words. When it's on a plate like this, when it looks like dinner, I just remember... Remember what? Remember Mommy sitting at the table, trying to eat dinner, and how sick she would get after. I understood then. It wasn't just about the food itself. It was about the ritual of sitting down to a formal meal, the way her mother had done every night before getting sicker and sicker. Okay, I said gently, moving my own plate aside. We don't have to eat at the table. We could have a picnic on the living room floor, or eat standing up in the kitchen. Whatever feels safe for you. We ended up eating our dinner, sitting on the couch, watching cartoons. Lily managed to eat about half of her meal, which was more than she'd eaten at dinner in weeks. After dinner, we watched a movie together. Lily curled up next to me on the couch, and for a few hours, we just enjoyed being a normal family. No tension, no fear, no walking on eggshells. But I could see that as bedtime approached, Lily was getting anxious again. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked. "Tomorrow Daddy comes home," she said quietly. "Are you worried about that?" She nodded. "When he's here, I can't talk to you about the important things." "What important things?" "The things I need to tell you. The things that might keep you safe." My heart was racing, but I tried to keep my voice calm. "You can always talk to me, Lily. Anytime you want." She shook her head. "Not when he's here. He doesn't like it when I talk about mommy or about before. He says it makes people sad." "Well, he's asleep now, and he won't be home until tomorrow night. So, if there's anything you want to tell me, this is a good time." Lily considered this for a moment, then curled up closer to me on the couch. "There are things I remember," she said quietly. "Things about when mommy got sick. Things I don't think I was supposed to see." "What kind of things?" "Daddy in the kitchen late at night when he thought I was asleep. He would mix things into mommy's food, and he had these little bottles in his office that he would hide when people came over. Did you ever see what was in the bottles? White powder and pills, and sometimes liquid that looked like water but smelled funny." I was struggling to breathe normally. "Lily, did your daddy know that you saw these things?" "I don't think so. I was very quiet. I learned how to walk without making the floors creak. A 7-year-old child sneaking around her own house, like a spy trying to figure out why her mother was dying. It was too horrible to fully comprehend." We sat in silence for a few minutes, and I could tell Lily was working up the courage to say something else. Finally, close to 11 o'clock, she slipped off the couch and padded over to where I was sitting. She looked around the room like she was making sure we were really alone, then leaned in close to my ear. "Mama Claire," she whispered, "I need to tell you something really important." I knelt down so we were at eye level. "You can tell me anything, sweetheart. I promise." She took a deep breath, looked me straight in the eyes, and whispered the words that changed everything. "Daddy put white powder in mommy's food too, and after she ate it, she died." The world stopped. Everything I had suspected, everything I had feared, everything I had tried to convince myself couldn't possibly be true. It was all confirmed in those 14 words from a 7-year-old child. Adam hadn't just been an impatient stepfather. He hadn't just been dismissive of his daughter's grief. He was a murderer, and Lily had been trying to save my life. The silence that followed Lily's confession felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only a few seconds. I was staring into the eyes of this tiny, brave little girl who had just told me the most horrifying thing I'd ever heard, and my brain was struggling to process the reality of what she'd said. "Lily?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Can you tell me more about what you saw?" She glanced around the room again, as if Adam might materialize out of thin air. "After Daddy put the white powder in mommy's food, she would eat it because he would watch her until she finished everything on her plate. Just like he does with me now. Just like he does with you." My blood turned to ice. "He watches me eat." "Uh-huh. He watches everyone eat. He gets really upset if people don't finish their food. Remember when you left some pasta on your plate last week? He was mad for the whole next day." I did remember. I had been too tired to finish dinner one night, and Adam had made several comments about wasting food, about not appreciating the effort that went into cooking. At the time, I thought he was just being practical, maybe a little controlling. Now I was seeing it in an entirely different light. "What happened after your mommy ate the food with the powder?" I asked gently. "She would get really sleepy. Sometimes she would fall asleep at the dinner table, and then she would throw up a lot. Daddy said it was because she was sick, but..." Lily's voice trailed off. "But what, sweetheart?" "But she was only sick after she ate dinner. In the mornings before she ate anything, she seemed more like herself. It was only after meals that she got really bad." The pattern was becoming crystal clear, and it was more diabolical than I could have imagined. Adam hadn't just poisoned his wife once. He had been slowly, systematically poisoning her over what must have been weeks or months, making it look like a gradual illness. "Lily, Do you remember how long your mommy was sick before she died? A really long time. Maybe since Christmas. And she died in the spring when the flowers were blooming. 4 or 5 months. He had tortured this woman for 4 or 5 months, poisoning her slowly enough that it would look like a wasting disease. I was scared Daddy would do that to you too, Lily said, and now she was crying openly. That's why I stopped eating. I thought if I didn't eat the food, maybe I could tell if something was wrong with it. And maybe I could warn you. The weight of what this child had been carrying crashed over me like a tsunami. For months, this 7-year-old had been trying to be my bodyguard using the only method she could think of. She had been starving herself to protect me. I pulled her into the tightest hug of her life. You are protecting me, I whispered into her hair. You're so brave, Lily. You're the bravest person I've ever met. She sobbed against my shoulder, and I could feel years of fear and responsibility and terror pouring out of her tiny body. I didn't know what else to do, she cried. I tried to tell the people at Mommy's funeral, but Daddy said I was just confused because I was sad. And then when you came, I thought maybe he wouldn't hurt you because he loved you. But then I saw him looking at you the same way he used to look at Mommy, and I got scared. What do you mean the same way? Like he was thinking about something. Like he was planning something. And he started asking you to cook dinner all the time, just like he did with Mommy. My mind was racing, trying to piece together every interaction I'd had with Adam around food. He had been encouraging me to cook. He had been specific about wanting me to prepare meals rather than ordering takeout. And now that I thought about it, he had been unusually interested in my eating habits. Always asking if I'd finished my lunch, commenting when I didn't clean my plate, suggesting that I try new recipes. Lily, I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Have you ever seen your daddy put anything in my food? Any powder or liquid or pills? She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her thinking hard. I don't think so, she said finally. But I haven't been watching as much as I used to because I was too scared. And sometimes he cooks when I'm at school. The thought that Adam might have already started poisoning me sent panic shooting through my system. But I couldn't think about that right now. Right now, I needed to focus on getting help and keeping both Lily and myself safe. Lily, we need to call someone. We need to get help. Who can we call? Daddy says police don't believe children when they tell stories about grown-ups. That's not true, sweetheart. There are good police officers who are specially trained to help children. And we have grown-ups who will believe us and help us. I was thinking of Mia. Mia would know what to do. But what if Daddy finds out? What if he gets really mad? He's not going to find out tonight. He's not coming home until tomorrow evening. Remember? That gives us time to get help and make sure you're safe. I looked at the clock on the mantel. It was almost midnight, but I knew Mia would want me to call her regardless of the time. Lily, I'm going to call our neighbor Mia. You remember her, right? She's the teacher who lives next door. She's going to help us figure out what to do. Lily nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I dialed Mia's number with shaking fingers. Claire, Mia's voice was groggy but alert. Is everything okay? Mia, I need you to come over. Right now, something terrible has happened and I need help. I'll be right there. True to her word, Mia was at my door within 5 minutes, wearing sweatpants and a hastily thrown-on jacket, her hair in a messy ponytail. What's going on? She asked as soon as I let her in. I looked at Lily, who was sitting on the couch watching us with wide eyes. Lily told me something tonight that changes everything. Adam didn't just lose his first wife to illness. He poisoned her, and Lily witnessed it. Mia's face went pale. Oh my God. She's been refusing to eat because she was trying to protect me from the same thing. She thought if she didn't eat, she could somehow warn me if something was wrong with the food. Mia sat down heavily in the armchair across from us. Claire, we need to call the police immediately. I know, but first I need to find evidence. If we're going to accuse Adam of murder, we need more than the testimony of a 7-year-old. What kind of evidence? Lily mentioned that Adam keeps bottles and powders in his office. If those substances are still there, if we can find them before he gets home tomorrow night. That's breaking and entering. That's illegal. So is murder. Mia looked at Lily, who was listening to our conversation with the solemnity of someone much older than 7. Lily, Mia said gently, "Can you tell me about your daddy's office? Is it locked?" Lily nodded. "But I know where he keeps the key. He hides it in a book on the shelf in the living room." "Do you know which book?" "The big red one about computers. The key is inside the front cover." I found the book she was talking about immediately. It was a thick manual about software engineering, and sure enough, there was a small silver key taped inside the front cover. "This feels like we're crossing a line," Mia said quietly. We crossed a line the moment a 7-year-old had to become my protector," I replied. "If there's evidence in that office that could prevent another murder, don't we have an obligation to find it?" Mia looked conflicted, but she nodded. "Lily, I want you to stay out here with Mia while I go look in the office." "Okay." But Lily shook her head. "I want to come with you. I know where he keeps the secret things." "Sweetheart, I don't want you to have to see those things again. I've already seen them, and I'm the only one who knows where they are." She was right, and we didn't have a lot of time to debate. Adam could change his mind and come home early. We needed to move fast. The 3 of us went to Adam's office. It was a small room off the main hallway lined with bookshelves and dominated by a large desk with 2 computer monitors. I had been in here a few times before, but Adam had always been with me and I had never paid attention to anything beyond the surface level. Lily went straight to a filing cabinet in the corner. "He keeps the bottles in the bottom drawer," she said quietly. "But it's locked too." I tried the desk drawers and the bottom one was unlocked. Inside, I found what looked like a collection of prescription pads from various doctors. Some were blank, some had been partially filled out. "Mia, look at this." She came over and examined the pads. "These are from at least 5 different physicians. How would Adam have access to prescription pads from multiple doctors?" "I have no idea, but it can't be legal." Lily was tugging on my sleeve. "Mama Claire, I found where he keeps the key to the file cabinet. It's taped under his desk." I got down on my hands and knees and felt around under the desk until I found it. Another small key, this one taped to the underside of the desk drawer. The bottom drawer of the filing cabinet was like a treasure trove of evidence. Small plastic bags containing white powders. Bottles of pills with labels that had been partially scraped off. Vials of clear liquid. And in the very back, a notebook. I pulled out the notebook with trembling hands and opened it. What I saw inside made me physically sick. It was a detailed log written in Adam's neat handwriting. Dates, times, substances, and dosages. And next to each entry, notes about the subject's reaction. Subject became lethargic within 30 minutes. Vomiting occurred approximately 2 hours post-ingestion. Increased dosage resulted in prolonged unconsciousness. And at the top of the page in Adam's handwriting, Jessica Miller, test subject A. I flipped through more pages. The entries went on for months, documenting a systematic campaign of poisoning that had ultimately resulted in Jessica's death. And on the very last page that had been written on, I found something that made my blood freeze. Claire Miller, test subject B. Begin protocol after honeymoon period. Initial dosage 5 meows daily in morning coffee. "Oh my God," Mia whispered, looking over my shoulder. "Claire, he's already started." I thought about all the mornings Adam had brought me coffee in bed. All the times he had insisted on making my morning coffee himself, saying he wanted to take care of me. How many times had I drunk poison thinking it was love? "We need to call the police," Mia said urgently. "Right now, tonight." "What about Lily? What happens to her when they arrest Adam?" "They'll make sure she's safe. There are protocols for situations like this. But, Claire, if you don't call the police tonight, you might not live long enough to protect her anyway." She was right. We had found the evidence we needed, and every hour we waited was another hour that Adam could return home. Another hour that he could destroy this evidence. Another hour that both Lily and I were in danger. "Lily," I said gently, "we're going to call the police now." They're going to come here and take all of these things as evidence, and they're going to arrest your daddy. Will they put him in jail? Yes, sweetheart, they will. Good, she said with a firmness that surprised me. He hurt mommy and he was going to hurt you. Bad people should go to jail. I called 911 from Adam's office, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes. 911, what's your emergency? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. I think my husband poisoned his first wife, and I believe he's been poisoning me too. I have evidence and I have a witness. I need police to come to my house immediately. Ma'am, are you in immediate danger? My husband is out of town until tomorrow night, but yes, I believe both my stepdaughter and I are in serious danger. Can you tell me your name and address? I gave her all the information she needed, answered all her questions about weapons in the house, and whether Adam had a history of violence. Within minutes, I could hear sirens in the distance. They're coming, I told Lily, who was still standing quietly next to the filing cabinet. Everything is going to be okay now. Are you sure? I'm sure. We're going to be safe, and we're going to make sure that what happened to your mommy never happens to anyone else. The police cars pulled into our driveway with their lights flashing, and I knew that our lives were about to change forever. But for the first time in months, that change felt like hope instead of fear. The next few hours were a blur of activity that I'll never forget as long as I live. Detective Sarah Rodriguez arrived first, followed by what seemed like an army of forensic specialists, crime scene photographers, and investigators. Detective Rodriguez was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle manner, but I could see the steel underneath when she started asking questions. Lily was incredible, absolutely incredible. This 7-year-old child who had been too terrified to eat a sandwich in front of her father stood in that office and calmly pointed out every hiding place where Adam kept his poison supplies. The white powder is in those bags, she said, pointing to the filing cabinet. And there are more bottles behind the books on that shelf. Daddy thought I didn't know about those, but I saw him put them there. The forensic team photographed everything before carefully bagging it as evidence. Watching them work, seeing all of Adam's carefully hidden supplies laid out on tables, was surreal. This wasn't some crime drama on TV. This was real life, and this monster had been living in my house, sleeping in my bed, planning to kill me. Detective Rodriguez knelt down to Lily's level. Lily, you've been very brave tonight. I know this is scary, but you're helping us make sure that no one else gets hurt. Will you catch him before he comes home? Lily asked. We're going to try our very best. While the forensic team worked, Detective Rodriguez took detailed statements from Lily, me, and Mia. Lily's testimony was heartbreaking but clear. She described in chilling detail the gradual deterioration of her mother's health, the late-night activities she had witnessed, and her own desperate attempts to protect me. I didn't know who else to tell, she said quietly. Daddy said that if I told stories about him, people would think I was lying because I was just a sad little girl missing her mommy. That particular manipulation made me sick to my stomach. Adam had not only killed his wife, but had also psychologically terrorized his daughter into silence. Around 3 a.m, one of the forensic specialists made a discovery that changed everything. Detective Rodriguez, he called from across the room. I found a safe behind this bookshelf. The safe was small, but well hidden behind a row of computer manuals. It took a locksmith another hour to get it open, but when they did, we found something that would prove to be the most damning evidence of all. Jessica's journal. It was a small leather-bound book, and as Detective Rodriguez flipped through it, her expression grew darker with each page. Mrs. Miller, she said to me, I think you need to see this. The journal entries started about 6 months before Jessica's death. In the beginning, they were just notes about feeling unusually tired, having trouble concentrating, experiencing nausea after meals. March 15th. Felt sick again after dinner. Adam thinks I might have a stomach bug, but it's been going on for weeks now. March 22nd. The fatigue is getting worse. I can barely stay awake in the afternoons. Adam has been so sweet, making me special meals to help me feel better. But as the entries progressed, Jessica's suspicions began to grow. April 3rd. Something is wrong. I feel fine in the mornings, but after I eat anything Adam prepares, I feel terrible. I mentioned this to him and he seemed upset that I would even suggest such a thing. April 10th. I found some strange bottles in Adam's office today. When I asked him about them, he said they were work-related chemicals. But why would a software engineer need chemicals? The final entries were the most heartbreaking of all. April 20th. I think Adam is poisoning me. I know how insane that sounds, but I can't ignore the evidence anymore. I'm going to start keeping some of my food to have it tested. April 25th. I tried to call the police, but Adam caught me. He was furious. He said I was being paranoid and that the stress was making me delusional. But I know what I know. May 1st. I'm getting weaker every day. If something happens to me, please take care of Lily. Don't let Adam hurt her. I've hidden this journal where I hope she'll never have to find it. But if she does, I want her to know that her mama loved her more than anything in the world. That was the last entry. Jessica had died 3 days later. Reading her journal, seeing her slow realization that her husband was killing her was one of the most devastating experiences of my life. But it was also validation for Lily, proof that her memories were accurate and that her fear had been justified. As the investigation continued over the next few days, more pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The forensic team identified the substances in Adam's collection: industrial-grade sedatives, rat poison, and several prescription medications that were highly toxic in large doses. Financial investigators uncovered something equally disturbing. Adam had taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Jessica just 6 months before her death. The timing was suspicious enough, but what made it even worse was the discovery that he had taken out an identical policy on me just 2 weeks after our wedding. I had never signed any life insurance documents. Adam had forged my signature. The investigators also found evidence of prescription fraud. Adam had been using stolen prescription pads to obtain controlled substances, which he had then been stockpiling for his poisoning operations. When Adam's flight landed on Sunday evening, police were waiting for him at the airport. According to Detective Rodriguez, he seemed genuinely surprised to be arrested, which made sense. He had no idea that his 7-year-old daughter had found the courage to expose him. His first words were, "There must be some mistake." His denial continued throughout the entire legal process. Even when faced with overwhelming evidence, the journal, the poisons, the forged documents, the detailed log of his crimes, Adam maintained his innocence. He claimed that Jessica had died of natural causes, that the substances in his office were for legitimate research, that Lily was a confused child who had misunderstood what she saw. But the evidence was too overwhelming, and Lily's testimony was too compelling. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Lily had to testify, which broke my heart, but she was incredibly brave. She sat in that witness stand, this tiny girl in a purple dress that we had picked out together, and told the entire courtroom exactly what she had seen. "My daddy put white powder in my mommy's food," she said clearly. "And after she ate it, she got sick, and then she died." The defense attorney tried to discredit her testimony, suggesting that she was too young to understand what she had witnessed, that her memories might be confused or influenced by adults, but Lily was unshakable. "I know what I saw," she said firmly. "And I know the difference between real medicine and poison." When it was my turn to testify, I read excerpts from Jessica's journal. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom as I shared her growing realization that her husband was killing her, her desperate attempts to get help, and her final plea to protect Lily. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all charges: first-degree murder, attempted murder, prescription fraud, and insurance fraud. Adam Miller was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the judge read the sentence, I looked over at Lily, who was sitting quietly next to the victim's advocate who had been assigned to her case. She didn't cheer or cry or show any dramatic emotion. She just nodded like justice had finally been served. "Is it over now, Mama Claire?" she asked me as we left the courthouse. "Yes, sweetheart. It's over. You're safe now." The adoption process took 6 months, but it was the easiest 6 months of my life. Adam had no family who wanted custody of Lily, and I had already been acting as her guardian since his arrest. The social worker assigned to our case said she had never seen a clearer case of a child who belonged exactly where she was. On the day the adoption was finalized, we decided to have a small celebration at home. Just Lily and me and Mia, who had become like a grandmother to both of us. "What do you want to eat for our special dinner?" I asked Lily as we stood in the kitchen looking through cookbooks. She was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. "Could we make Mommy's old hamburger recipe? The one she used to make before everything changed. Do you remember how she made it?" "I think so. She used to let me help her. We would put special cheese inside the meat, and she would make these really good sweet potato fries." It took us almost 2 hours to make dinner that night, and it was wonderfully messy. Lily got flour in her hair while making the buns from scratch. I accidentally burned the first batch of sweet potato fries. We laughed so much that Mia said she could hear us from next door. But when we finally sat down to eat, everything was perfect. Not because the food was restaurant quality, but because it was made with love and eaten without fear. "This is exactly how Mommy used to make it," Lily said, taking a big bite of her hamburger. "She would be happy that we remembered." "I think she would be very proud of you," I told her. "You saved both of our lives." After dinner, as we were cleaning up the dishes together, Lily looked up at me with those big brown eyes that had seen too much but were finally learning to trust again. "Mama Claire," she said, "your food is the most delicious in the world." I knelt down to hug her, and I could feel tears streaming down my face. "You're the most precious thing in mine," I whispered. As I tucked her into bed that night, I thought about everything we had been through together. We weren't bound by blood, but by something much stronger. We were bound by trust, by survival, and by the kind of unconditional love that can weather any storm. Lily had taught me what real courage looked like. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a 7-year-old girl refusing to eat because she was trying to protect someone she loved. It was choosing to speak the truth, even when you were terrified of the consequences. And I had learned something else too. Sometimes, the people who seem the most broken are actually the strongest of all. Sometimes, the quiet ones, the ones who seem small and powerless, are the ones who end up saving everyone else. Lily saved my life, but in the process, she also taught me what it really means to be a mother. It's not about cooking perfect meals or having all the answers. It's about creating a safe space where the people you love can finally stop being afraid. Every night now, Lily eats everything on her plate, not because she has to, but because she wants to. Because food has become what it was always supposed to be: nourishment, comfort, and love. And every morning when I make her breakfast, I remember how close we came to losing each other, and I'm grateful all over again for the brave little girl who refused to give up on both of us. They say that blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that's not always true. Sometimes, the strongest families are the ones built by choice, strengthened by survival, and held together by love that refuses to let go. Lily and I are proof of that. We're not just a family now. We're survivors. And we're going to be just fine. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the most important messages. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for listening, and remember, trust your instincts. They might just save your life.